it's really something that I don't think you want to really get into a knee-jerk reaction of automatically, wanting to cut your rates. You really need to analyze that and look at it, because it's going to take a while to really dig out of this hole. Probably, I don't have the planning department's crystal ball to look into the future, but nonetheless, I think we have the experience in terms of the last recession and how long and the impact that had upon the city, and how long it took for the city to dig itself out of that hole. And we may find ourselves in that position a little bit. And so getting into the enterprise funds and being able to and cut the revenue stream to enable you to provide the essential services that you are required to do so for your citizens. I think at this point, I cautioned you very, very much so to not reduce the rates, but to look at this thing over a longer haul and to get the analysis in terms of what the rate impacts are. We in the Public Works Department will do our utmost to see what, if in fact this thing drags on, and where we can make some substantive cuts to lessen any rate increases and bring about some cost savings and things of that nature. But we haven't completed that analysis yet. We've been asked to do so, and we're in the beginning stages of doing so. So I just want to throw that out as a cautionary note, and recommend that such substantive cuts of 25 or 50% or 75%, I think would be very, very premature at this point, or I wouldn't even recommend it.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that perspective from you as a professional. We have some people who haven't asked questions yet, so I'll go with Tad first, please.
Oh, I was next in line.
Thank you, Mayor Foster. Thanks, Steve. That was a really great explanation of how it could impact. And I agree. I think that it's very premature. We really don't know how this is going to affect us. And I also want everybody on the council to remember that if we forgive the rates, say for 2 months or 3 months or whatever, that is going to require us to raise rates in the future to make that revenue back up. There's no way around it. So if you give away $1 million in rates, you have got to make that revenue back up, because we've used the reserves and given the water, and I get it, we all want to help, but I think it's a very dangerous spot, only because we are going to recollect that when we're already trying to do some other projects that are priorities. So I just think we have to be very, very mindful that if you give away $300,000, $400,000 in rate, we have to make that up over the next 12 months or 18 months or whatever. And so we're back in another position of raising rates. And personally, I don't want to be forced to do that because we prematurely reduced rates for the public. And I'm sympathetic. I understand it's a tough time for all of us, but I think that's a very, very dangerous area to go into. That's really more of a statement than a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Tad. Let's go to Terry, who's been very patiently waiting to ask her question.
Thank you. No, I don't have a question. I just had a comment after Molly, and then Steve has really reiterated everything I really feel. I'm just encouraged and amazed that even though we've offered help to our citizens, nobody has really needed it. And I think that's an amazing thing, and I hope we can carry on, and I hope this all ends soon.
Thank you, Terry. Just because they haven't asked yet doesn't mean they won't, for sure. It's nice to have that ability to help them. And later on under initiatives, I'll have another opportunity to help our local community. But thank you for your perspective. I think I need to go to Tracy now, who hasn't had a chance to talk for a while.
Pardon me. It's more of a comment. I think that we also need to realize that I don't know, I hate to even bring this up, but I know in the past, folks have said as far as our rates being, rising and using it as a reason. Well, the reason that the rates have risen is because previous administrations weren't active in continuing to raise them or different scenarios. But I remember being around at this time when we were dealing with a real similar situation with a recession, where we were stuck in a similar position and made choices to stop progress, to try, because of the recession. At which point, people forget, and here we are all these years down the road, and I still hear, that statement that the previous administration, because of lack of action, it's quick that people forget there were outstanding circumstances that, left people in a position. What I'm concerned about is us putting ourselves in that same position down the road by quickly reacting to something that we're not quite sure what exactly is the future. That's all I got to say on that.
Thank you, Tracy. Show of hands, does anyone else have a comment or a question? I lost track. I think we'll go with Cody, then Molly, then Joe. Joe, you were kind of like flapping your hand. Can I see your hand? Joe, you had a question? Okay. So Cody, Molly, Joe, please.
Yeah, and I know we don't make any decisions here at study sessions, but I would be interested just to see the numbers. Like, we're not deciding to lower rates right now. I'd just be interested to see the numbers in case this does go on for another 6-12 months. We don't know. Then we do have to come to the decision where we have to lower rates because, so many people are out of jobs. So I think it would behoove us to get ahead of the ball and look at the rates numbers now, at least not make a decision on them, but at least look at the numbers and get those prepared. So we're not asking for, again, in 6 months what those are.
Okay. Molly?
Yeah, I mean, I just want the numbers. I want a projection to see what would happen if we go to that point. I'm not saying that we should do that now. I'm not saying that this is even a good idea to do it now, but I think that we need to have the numbers in front of us in case it gets to that point. So, let's not all jump all over the bandwagon here. I do think that we need to see what some worst case scenarios might happen. So I'd like to see the numbers.
Okay. Joe?
Thank you. Yeah, I had some, I got a couple comments and questions. First one was, is to Steve. You said now is not the time to be making these calls and making these cuts to water rates. I'm questioning, in your professional opinion, when would be the correct time to consider these? That's my first question.
Well, I think to lower rates, you certainly, there are a lot of variables that you're going to have to take a look at, but certainly you're going to have to look at your bonded indebtedness. What's going to take for the responsibility of what are the primary costs that you're going to have to pay, irregardless of cuts. I mean, you made obligations financially that you have to fulfill as a city. That would be the first thing I would look at. The second thing is, what do you need to do to maintain the system and to operate, not only maintain it, but just to operate it? And what are the operational costs that you have to have in order to provide that basic level of service? We'd have to look at that. So, I mean, you can break the whole things down, but it's really, you establish the hierarchy of priorities in terms of the things that you have to do. And then there are the things, you like to do if you have the additional revenues to be able to do them. Having looked at the rates for the last, 6 months or so, and look at the maintenance and operation, I will tell you that it's not a big, rich enterprise to be. Most of the revenues that you generate in are basically covering costs, with some set aside for major emergencies and some set aside for some, capital projects and the like. But I think, we'll certainly have to look at that, but it's going to take us a little bit of time to, put those scenarios together to be able to come up with an intelligent answer to give you for your consideration. Sure.
And that's fair. And I can appreciate that. Could you give me a rough estimate? Months, years, decades? How long do you think it would take to get that kind of information so we could make that determination?
Well, I would hope within 30 days or so, we could, put together those scenarios in terms of the hierarchy of things.
Okay.
But, that would certainly take quite an effort. The thing that we don't really understand at this particular point is we haven't really done any of the utility billings, since, we're doing them, but we don't know, or we haven't seen, what the drop in revenues or the revenue, rate drops or however they would be. You really almost need a trend for that. What happens in this month, what happens in the next month, probably in 3 months, you at least will start to be able to see some sort of a trend, to be able to see, how that's impacting rates, both in terms of the businesses and the like. So, there's just so much information that we just don't have at this point to really make, intelligent decisions. And
Okay.
I don't think it's appropriate that we, cut our nose off to spite our face at this particular point in time.
Fair enough. My follow-up to that was in regards to Councilmember Wood talking about the decisions and actions they had to take in 2008 and 2009. And I understand it's a very similar situation where we're in a world of uncertainty in terms of revenue and just the economy in general. But we're also not considering purchasing a $1 million library or a multi-million-dollar community center like you guys did during that period of time. We're talking about cutting water rates and sewer rates by looking at those graphs that we were shown earlier. It looked like they were about $300,000 for water monthly that we were getting, or $300,000-ish for sewer. If we cut, let's say, the water by 50%, just quick math, $150,000. If we got revenues, operating reserves for 4 months, and this is talking about a very small, and that's if the worst case scenario, if we didn't get any money in, we're talking about a very small impact, in my opinion. And I could be wrong. If we get some harder numbers here that would help us make these determinations, and it sounds like Steve says it's going to be about a month before we can get those numbers, I think that's fine. Even if we can get that even in a month, to be able to make those decisions retroactively. I don't want to rush I don't want to rush this and make a decision that's going to be fiscally insolvent for the city of Yelm. But I think there are people struggling, and whether people on this council don't think that's a lot of money for folks to pay their water utilities, it is. I mean, they might be reaching out to you, but I've been reached out to a lot of people. And it's not just the residential users either. It's the business owners too. This could make a huge impact for businesses. And I get that they're, using less water because there's no customers coming in physically, but just the base rate alone is high enough for them. So I do think that this is a huge impact for not only the residents, but the business owners in Yelm. And I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from the graphs that I saw, that $300,000 for water, if we cut that in half or more, I don't think, I think we can survive this as a city and as a community. So thanks.
With all due respect, I think you're premature in that thought. I mean, it's just not to say that maybe that could happen, but at the same, I couldn't speak, intelligently enough at this point to say that it would be problematic. I mean, if you took $300,000 out of the sewer fund, for example, what do you cut? Do you cut not maintaining your step tanks? Do you cut if a pump breaks down and you need to replace it? Do you not replace it? I mean, these are tough decisions to be sure, but we have to kind of look at this thing and kind of dissect it into pieces to see exactly what could happen and possibly what couldn't happen. So
yeah,
that's why
I agree, Steve. I agree, Steve. We should be making this, and I'm not saying we should be making this decision right now. We don't make decisions study session anyway. But when you said a month or so to get those statistics, when we do have that information, you said that would be the right time to make that call. And so I hope to make this call in about a month, like you suggested.
Okay.
Within 30 days or so, I think we would be able to do some sort of a financial analysis to speak a little more intelligently about this. And I don't think all the trend information there on rates are really going to be available, but we can certainly look at what's going on within the division, what the impacts would be. And as Michael had pointed out, the impact of dropping 5%, 10%, and dropping down if there's a drop in the revenue stream and whatnot, those are the impacts. And we would have to look at that, whether or not there's actual rates that do drop, or if you're decide to minimize rates or give a rate discount at this particular point. But nevertheless, we're going to be looking at that, and we certainly need to at least have a 30 days at minimum to be able to put together that scenario to talk about it intelligently with the council.
Okay, thank you for that. I want to add something to the discussion, even though we're not discussing any particular action at this study session. I do want the council to keep some things in mind when they're considering this. No other municipality that I know of, first off, is considering cutting their utility rates for all of the good reasons that Steve Clark has outlined for us. I also don't see the cable company, the Puget Sound Energy, the telephone companies, the lawyers, the construction companies, anybody cutting their costs, because they all understand that the stimulus package, the $2 trillion that are going to be infused into our economy that has never been done before, is going to start at the bottom and pay its way up, pay its way forward, help complete the circular integrity of our local economy. That's what we're trying to rely on. I do know that some agencies with greater capacity have done some cuts. So if you talk to your lender, you can get a month's delay in paying your mortgage. That's awesome, but you're still paying it. No interest, but you're paying it. Most of the insurance companies, I don't know if Tad can give any light on this, but I know my insurance company is giving a 15% payback on my auto loan, on my auto insurance, because of reduced travel times and thus reduced risk and reduced claims for injury to the cars and so forth. So people who can and have the resiliency are doing that. But when we start messing with the revenue stream for the city services, the only way that we can make that up is through either raising rates later, like was mentioned, or reducing service, which includes more failure to our already aging infrastructure, and or layoffs of essential personnel. That's the only issues that we have, either revenue in or expenditures out. So we have to keep all of that in mind when you as council members provide us with an option that you would like us to consider, like yourselves to consider at a future meeting. Michael, are we done with that presentation? And do we have any other questions?
I am done. The goal was just to provide information for the council to continue the discussion. Steve, jump in if I'm miscorrect, but I just want to provide more of the bigger picture context of the effort that is happening right now, which I think will address a lot of the questions and desires that some of you have to keep looking at this further. We've implemented the capital sewer improvement plan, the facilities plan that was done in 2016. We allocated funds for phase 1, phase 2. We're now looking at the design of the future facility going forward. And of course, now the hard job comes in. How do we figure out how to pay for that? And as part of that conversation, all of these different points of information and different dissections that you want to do can come into play. The next step for us is to figure out what funds are available from state and federal resources. And so what our public works and our finance team has done is they've met with the IACC and folks from Commerce, and we're bringing all those folks together at a meeting, and we're virtual meeting, and we're going to go explore what our scenario is, what our path forward is, and what funds are available. We'll then come back to council and report that out. Obviously, as we get the design and everything else fleshed out from the consultants, that'll have more detail that we can give those folks. But once we solidify what funds and fund sources are available, then that'll allow us to back into that rate analysis conversation to look at clearly where are we trying to go and what does that cost, and then what are the ways to get there. And I think everyone's unanimous in thinking no one wants to raise rates, no one wants to have rates go up. But that's a reality of paying for these kind of infrastructure improvements and the services. But what exactly that looks like, and how do we, pivot, if any way, to deal with revenue shortfalls and any rate reductions that you want to consider during this pandemic, that all can be factored into that conversation as we keep an eye on where we're trying to go and what those final numbers are and what it costs to A, operate it, and B, maintain it going forward into the future. So I just want to remind folks of that larger conversation that'll be happening and will happen in tandem with the other interests that you have.
Thank you. Tracy Wood, you had a comment earlier?
I just wanted to respond to something Councilmember DePinto said in reference to some business owners being concerned. And I think I'm just expanding on what you mentioned as well. I would recommend letting them know that the banks are there to help us. And there's a couple of programs, especially, that are literally going to pay the salaries that I still have. and anticipate in order to get business back up and running, as well as another program that's literally helping to pay mortgages and insurances and all the other costs involved that unfortunately we're not bringing in any revenue to cover. My point is as once again, just to expand on what the mayor said, that the federal government's, kind of taking the lead on this, and by all indications, it looks like this is, where it's going to be coming from.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Joe DePino? Joe, did you have a comment?
Yeah, sorry, I was just unmuting myself. I have been talking with businesses. I have been trying to give them resources and working with them. I'm talking to a business right after this. Someone messaged me about a post I made talking about a small grants loan or a small grant that the state of Washington doing up to $10,000, asking for my help to do that. So I am responding to them businesses, but there's other avenues that we can do it within the city of Yelm, in my opinion. And this looks like this conversation is going to go on, not just tonight, but maybe into the future here, even a month. But I don't want to make any rash decisions. We shouldn't be making quick decisions with just our guts, but we should be making these decisions after we have these numbers. And that's what we're asking for. We're not asking to cut rates right now. We're having that conversation. And I realize that, it's a scary thought that we could lose some revenue. But I think that we still need to have the conversation. And if it turns out that we can't do it, we're going to be insolvent if we do it, then yeah, that's, we have to make that decision and that termination when we get that information. But at this point, we absolutely need to have this conversation, in my opinion. Thanks.
Okay, and on that note, also just keep in mind that if you go to thurstonstrong.org, which is a Thurston County website, you can go to every one of the resources that are available for the small businesses, including the Paycheck Protection Program and the emergency loans for small businesses. The governor was speaking today, how many more government employees are being switched over to work those programs. It's tedious. It takes some time to stay with the program, but if businesses and unemployed, self-employed people can have the patience to go to those sites, they're going to find that there's some really great resources available for them. Nobody wants any single business to fail here, and that's why these programs are being made available at a level that we've never seen before in this country. I think it was the Thurston EDC, not the county, that stood that up. But there's some really good organizations out there that can help us get through this on an individual and a business level. So help your constituents find that, if you would, please. And at risk of, there's no other way to say this, but since we are establishing the fact that we need more facts before the council can make decisions like this, it would be prudent of us to not speak publicly about making 90% cuts in water rates before we have that kind of information to base that on, because then we get pushback from people who say, well, how come you didn't do that? So let's wait till we have more information and we have an actual thing to work on from one of the council members based on the information you've asked for before we start making suggestions on how we're going to fix this, please. Joe?
Thanks, Mayor. I'm guessing that's directed at me. I'm making suggestions saying this is what I would like to see, or this is what council is talking about. We're not making any decisions, and I'm pretty clear with my conversation with people and my posts saying, we're not actually making these decisions. So I'm going to continue to tell people what I'm working on, what I'm hope that the city's going to do, but it's not the city doing this. And I mean, I'm not going to stop talking about what I want to see happen here in Yelm.
Very good. So that takes us to the end of our agendaed session. Unless somebody has last comment, question, you can raise your hand. You can just smile at me. Cody's always
Move to adjourn.
No, we don't do that. We do have time for council initiatives. So if somebody has something they'd like the council to think about, now's be the time. And I'm just going to go in my memory of the order that we would normally sit in. So Councilmember Carmody, excuse me, started right off. Councilmember Blair.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
A couple things. Me personally, I'm kind of backing away from lowering the rates for the simple fact that we did the payment arrangements. But outside of that, I just think we need to think long and hard about what we're going to do moving forward. For instance, at what point are we going to recognize that the cost benefit of the stay-at-home order, of it being good versus bad, the permanent loss of employment, permanent closure of businesses? We need to start thinking about what is our end of how we can mitigate that, because I don't, it's like, we all know that we all just don't know what's going on, but it's going to get really bad if it goes on too much longer. And then it's kind of like weighing, you know what I mean? And other than that, it was mentioned earlier about enforcement of it. And that's not something I would support at all. Personally, I question the constitutionality of it. And I would like to see us prohibit the Yelm Police Department from doing any sort of enforcement of the stay-at-home order now or in the future.
We can have more of a discussion about that, James, but we all took an oath to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the state of Washington. And if the governor makes a declaration of an emergency and then makes a governor's order, that becomes part of those laws. However, having said that, we're in no hurry to do the state's work for them. We've found that in Yelm here, we've had great compliance with the people taking care of things the way they're supposed to. I don't think it's going to come to that. The only thing I've asked our police department to do is to gently remind folks about the distancing rules in public, and they've only had a few occasions where they've even had to do that. We've also had some opportunity to talk to individual business owners about putting practices in place in their businesses, and that's as far as we intend to go with that.
That's great and all. Like I said, just because someone declares a state of emergency and starts pulling things, you still have to follow the Constitution. And right now, I mean, there's going to be court battles over all of this. And I think we all know that. So just be mindful. That's all.
Thanks, James. Councilmember Carmody, anything up?
We have an announcement from Intercity Transit. Intercity Transit is going on beginning Monday, April 13th. I'm just going to read here from their website. Scheduled bus service will be temporarily suspended and replaced by a reservation-based transit service to continue providing essential trips to the public. Dial-a-lift services will continue to be available for qualified passengers making essential trips. Essential trips include visits to the grocery store, pharmacy, medical appointments, and transportation for work. So they're not going to be going to, for sort of day trips or anything like that. If you want to make an essential trip reservation, you can call 360-786-1881 between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Or you can email the request at daldispatch@intercitytransit.com. So it's basically they're canceling all bus service as of Monday, April 13th.
And they're only open from 8 to 5?
No, you can call in from 8 to 5. That's when their office hours are.
You won't be able to do any same-day reservations. They're going to want you to reserve your trip 2 to 5 days out. But
right.
If you're a regular worker that had a schedule, you could arrange that in advance for the entire week.
Right.
Yeah,
like if you're working at one of those essential jobs and say, hey, I need to get to work from 9 to 5. I'm going to need a pickup. They'll come and do that. They'll arrange that for you. So. Yeah, it's or whatever your work hours are. If you work 4 to 11, they will help you out with that, but their office hours are only 9 to 5.
Got it. Thank you.
I've asked that get put on our reader board and also is going to be promoted through our social media and webpage. Thank you. Anything
That's
else?
all I got. Nope.
Councilmember Colt?
Nothing to report. I'm just glad everybody's doing well and keep on keeping on, everybody.
Thank you. Councilmember Wood?
Really nothing to report. I just, want to reiterate any of the business owners out there. I can tell you the Key Bank's been really helpful in keeping me up to date, and it's frustrating and the information changes from day to day, and it's a continual learning curve process, but we're all going through this. And, from where I'm sitting, it looks like we're going to be okay. We just got to all hang in here and, do our best to be Americans. And that's all I got.
Very nice. Councilmember Stillwell?
I really don't have a report. I just would like to reiterate, it's always nice to be able to have these discussions that are really hard and none of us agree really on the way forward. But just to be able to talk about them as civil as we have, I just really appreciate everybody's opinions and input. It's important that we all be heard and taken into consideration. So that's really all I have. My words of wisdom for the night. Stay safe.
Thanks. Councilmember DePino?
The only thing I have to say is wear a mask if you go out shopping for groceries or something. Just slow the spread. Stay healthy, everyone. Oh, like it. Love it.
Debbie Edwards made that for me. I didn't even want to ask her where she got the cloth. It could be something that Gary left behind, but it's a good one.
Wear the mask. Stay healthy, friends.
Absolutely. Councilmember Kaminsky?
Well, I thought I heard the governor was supposed to give an update tomorrow on things, so I hope it's good news, and I have nothing to report. I just can't wait for this to be over and life to be back to normal.
Yeah, well, speaking of normal, we have our city operations. I sent you all out an email already, but we have our city operations going strong. It was a challenge to get some people operational from remotely, but we are doing it very well. Kudos to Michael Graham, who really took the lead on answering the phones. I think he was answering 60 to 70 calls a day and forwarding them to the right department for resolution. There was that word I was looking for the other day, resolution. And thanks especially to our IT team. Grant, Jason, and Aaron did an incredible job of getting everybody up really quickly. So very appreciative. There's a lot of good stuff to report in our community, like I touched on before. And we appreciate all of our employees just so much for doing it. We all are aware of the CARES Act, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Stimulus Act that we've talked about already, bringing money into the community. People are going to see anywhere from $1,200 to more, depending on their family size. The problem is that we don't know when this money is actually going to get into people's accounts. And as has been mentioned today, some people are already hurting, who have lost their job and they didn't have a lot of reserve. And so how can we do things locally? My wife, Nikki, and I were talking about, we're supposed to be getting this stimulus check too, and we have a reliable income at this point. We feel very comfortable with that. We don't need it. We're going to use it to try to support our community, but how was the question. So over the last couple of days, I came up with an idea that we can stand up very quickly. I'm calling it the Yelm Community Relief Fund. And Nikki and I will be donating our relief money to get this seeded right away. I'm working with one of our local financial institutions who already has a foundation that we can use. And then we're going to work to take the donations in. And then we're working with Together, the group that has been working with us through the schools to do eviction prevention. They already have a process in place for vetting applications and an ability to make this happen very quickly. I'd named the financial institution, but they're doing a virtual board meeting tonight or tomorrow to get approval for this. But it all seems ready to go, at which point we should be able to take applications and put money in people's hands by the 1st of next week. So hopefully if other people are listening and they have the ability to seed this fund, it would be very appreciated by the people who will be recipients of this. We know that the need will be great. We hope that as time goes on, if we have money left over, we can apply it to the feeding programs like Backpacks for Kids and the Rotary's summer program. We'll make sure it goes to the right places. And then people who are recipients of it, when better times come, we hope that they will pay that forward. So you can look forward to links for that coming up in the next few days, and trying to look for other bright spots that we can help our community with. And anybody else? Cody, you want to do the honors?
We don't adjourn this, but
I know.
move to adjourn.
It's sort of a tradition. All right, thanks everybody.